The Field of 68 Media Network presents Red is the New Orange, a Syracuse basketball podcast.
Vince intercepts a pass, breakaway for the freshman guard, he flies and slams! Aerial assault from Judah Mintz. Looking to go back door to Bell, they get it to a near corner three, knocks it down! Chris Bell, the sharpshooter.
Bringing you everything you need to know out of the 315.
Up top, Williams surges ahead, up with the right hand and in. A pretty up and under move from Benny Williams to beat his man. Over to Taylor. He skips into the lane, puts up a floater, and drops in.
Let's get it started with your hosts, Ian Unsworth and Johnny Gadamowitz.
Hey everyone, what's going on? Another edition of Red is the New Orange. Johnny Gadamowitz, Ian Unsworth with you as always as part of the Field of 68 podcast network. As we inch closer to college hoop season, make sure you give us a follow on Twitter. We're at F68_Cuse. All sorts of great coverage surrounding the college basketball world over at the Field of 68. Make sure you give them a check as well. And then your individual school you're liking, chances are there's a podcast for it. So do your homework, do some research, go find that, give them a like, give them a subscribe, what have you. We are fully in, I guess you could say, kind of scrimmage season. I know there was a big St. John's Rutgers game last night that got a lot of eyeballs.
Ace Bailey, that guy was killing.
Yeah, the hype surrounding Rutgers is real. That will be a very interesting program to keep tabs on over the course of the next couple of months. As far as Syracuse is concerned, again, feels like really any day now. We're getting excited. We want to see what this orange team looks like. New look orange team, obviously year 2 under Red Autry. On today's episode, we're going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek as far as what Ian and I predict the rotation to look like, right? The starting 5, what are we looking at? Who goes where, and how does Red kind of tinker and mix and match with what he's got in various position groups. Before we do that, though, I don't want to call it housekeeping because it's not really housekeeping, but there are a couple of smaller nuggets that we should certainly hit on before we get into the meat and potatoes of what we have for you today. One of which really took the college hoops world by storm yesterday, Ian. Tony Bennett announcing his retirement from the University of Virginia, obviously a staple down in Charlottesville, and really a staple across the country. Obviously a national champion, did so much for that UVA program. And I think my takeaway is, the timing of this seems weird. And obviously we wish everything well. Doesn't feel like there hasn't been anything reported as far as any health issues or anything like that. So obviously we'll keep our fingers crossed that things stay that way. But to do it a couple of weeks before the season, and I get it, NIL, ever changing. Maybe Bennett's just one of those guys who didn't want to deal with all that, for lack of a better phrase. But it was really weird, Ian, and I'm sure you felt the same way, to see this come down in mid-October and not mid-July.
There was an interesting theory put out by one of our friends at the Field of 68. And I think this might be the cause of it. You retire this late in the preseason. It sets the table for the university to make an interim situation possible. No one has time for a full-on, full-blown head coaching search on October 18th or any time once school gets underway. These guys are in class. This is full bore, full go. We're practicing, we're lifting, we're watching film. They are primed and ready to play. If the season started today, all 350 college basketball teams would be ready to go. So you don't have time to go on a national coaching search. What you do have time to do is point at Tony Bennett's top assistant and say, all right, it's your show now. These guys trust you. They want to play for you. And we assume, we being the Virginia administration, that nothing will change if you take over. Of course, there will be little things that twist and turn based on the way that the new coaching staff or however things go, small things will change, but not the overarching Virginia philosophy. Take the air out of the basketball. Don't shoot a three if your life depends on it. Take 30 seconds, pack the defense in, all this sort of stuff. I don't think Virginia will play any different. That's the main takeaway from a Syracuse perspective. Tony Bennett might be gone, but don't expect a different Virginia team, right? The numbers, 364 total wins, 10 NCAA tournament appearances, the national title in the most improbable of ways. But Tony Bennett as a teacher of the game and also as just a great representative of the ACC will certainly go down in college basketball history. The guy never stepped a foot wrong, never said anything out of line, was always gracious, was always grateful, and he served the conference well. Ron Sanchez is Virginia's associate head coach, and I think everyone expects him to take the reins for now.
Yeah, I'll never forget. I did a game down in Charlottesville, and going into that Tony Bennett post-game press conference, normally you get your presser, coach kind of in and out. Tony even hung around after the official press conference ended and just chatted with reporters, chatted with writers, and you don't see that a ton. Syracuse does not play Virginia until the regular season finale. Get that, March the 8th in
Johnny,
the JMA.
you remember our first college basketball game as Syracuse freshmen?
Yes. Oh, yeah. When what? They scored like 40 points that day or something?
It was the ugliest
college
basketball game I've ever seen in my life. I don't think Syracuse scored for the first 8 minutes. The final score, 48-34.
Oh, my God.
82 combined points in 40 minutes of basketball.
Well,
I mean, we scored more than that in the Media Cup.
We did. That's Virginia basketball for you. Maybe it changes slightly, but as you say, I don't think any reason to expect anything crazy different. The other thing that bears mentioning here before we move right along is that the 76ers did indeed waive Judah Mintz yesterday. So as the NBA season is approaching, doesn't look like Mintz will have a spot, at least on that opening night roster. And Ian, we have kind of seen these stories of, rookies, young guys, they go G League to start, and then they carve out a nice little role for themselves eventually. I don't think it comes as a complete shock, but needless to say, if Judah's going to have a go in terms of the big leagues, it's going to take a little while longer for that to come to fruition.
Yeah, it's undrafted, right? It's always a long shot. He was on an Exhibit 10 contract, which is pretty much it's the equivalent of a 10-day contract in baseball or football. Like, all right, show us what you got. This is your one chance to leave it all out there. And he'll end up on the Delaware Bluecoats G League team for the Sixers. And the G League is rather competitive now. It's not what it was back in 2009, 2010 when it first started. And it was just a kind of a sideshow for the NBA. Like, guys are really competing there now. The scores are high because everyone wants to get theirs, and it turns into flying up and down the floor for some stats sometimes. But these are still very competitive games, and for teams that win and win consistently, the G League matters a lot. And the Bluecoats, even though the Sixers have been frustrating as a Philadelphian over the past couple of years, the Bluecoats are always good. So that is a positive sign. Judah Mintz will be playing with guys that want to win, are encouraged to win, and are good players. This isn't the minor leagues of baseball where they punt on a winning season because it's all about development, quote unquote.
So an opportunity for him to kind of make a name for himself, and knowing Judah and kind of just the way he carries himself, I'm sure he'll embrace it. I'm sure he'll view it as an opportunity. And look, everybody knows he's got talent. So if he goes down to Delaware and he puts his head down and he works, who knows what could happen? Time will tell.
Fix the jump shot.
Yes, fix the jump shot. That's item number one on his agenda. All right, now we get to the good stuff. And this is something that we've sort of been beating around the bush with a little bit for the first couple of episodes of the new year. We want to give you a look of what we're thinking as far as that opening night starting five is concerned. A lot of different ways you can go with it, right? We've spoken about the depth of this Syracuse team and how they have options, and how, we're not really going to have a very clear picture until we actually see a couple of games. But there's got to be a starting five, night one, right? So
yeah.
Ian and I are going to do our best to try to put that together for you. We'll break this down by backcourt, frontcourt. So Ian, if you want to do the honors What are you looking at as far as that first game is concerned? Who's going to be on the floor to kick off that first half?
So the 1, 2, and 3. The 2 and 3 are pretty solidified. J.J. Starling, Chris Bell, you know what you're going to get from those guys at this point. Are there strides to be taken in their games? Absolutely. Can they keep getting better? Absolutely. But as of right now, they're Syracuse's 2 best players. I expect Chris Bell, at least through the first couple of games, to play around 30 minutes a game. Blowouts notwithstanding, if Syracuse is crushing Lemoyne by 30 midway through the second half, Chris Bell doesn't need to be on the floor. But say if Syracuse were to jump into ACC play tomorrow, or once they get to Texas or Maryland or some of these tougher non-conference games, I expect Chris Bell to be playing 30 minutes a game. By all means, he's gotten stronger over the offseason. He's in great shape, and he doesn't have to do as much ball handling as these other guys in the backcourt, which gives him more longevity on the floor. 30 minutes a game for Chris Bell. I hope J.J. Starling's playing somewhere in the range of 26 to 28 a game as your primary scorer.
Well, he better be.
Yeah, offensive initiator. I mean, he played a lot last year. He and Judah played almost 90% of Syracuse's minutes. That is extremely high for a guard. So I think especially in the beginning of the year, Syracuse will try to take some of his workload off the plate, spread it around, get everyone involved, let all these transfers get a feel for the new offense. But you need J.J. Starling out there when it matters. Doesn't matter as much right now. So I think you tinker down the workload a little bit, let him rest, let him get comfortable, make sure he's feeling good heading into December. But those two are locks to be on the floor when it matters the most. Point guard was always a question coming into the year. Didn't exactly know what to expect because there are new faces in the mix. Then you get to media day, and all 3 Syracuse representatives, Coach Autry, along with J.J. Starling and Chris Bell, give ringing endorsements of Jaquan Carlos. They love this guy. So I expect Carlos to be on the floor for probably 22 to 24 minutes a game. He's the best defensive stopper, and he's also your primary ball handler. So that's a lot of energy he's going to exert. He'll probably pick up some fouls. I would think that Carlos, based on the role he's been given, will be a bit more foul prone than the others, just because he'll be guarding the best player on the other team in man-to-man defense for 95% of the Syracuse possessions. So that's going to take a lot out of you as a point guard. But I still expect him to be consistent, and I expect him to be on the floor a lot. Backup-wise, first off the bench for me is Lucas Taylor. You need a microwave. That should be the instant offense. Is Lucas Taylor coming off the bench, ripping it around some screens, and firing threes. So when you need a jump start offensively, if Starling picks up an early foul, or if Carlos is kind of in the muck, you bring Taylor in, let him shoot, let him go. His job is to score. Everything else, cool. If you can do it, that's great. But I need him shooting and spacing the floor. 18 minutes a game for Lucas Taylor. Elijah Moore, I'm starting him at 10 minutes a game, and this will be something where we see him grow, we see him develop and get more comfortable with the college game. But again, I think the ceiling is very high. We just don't exactly know where he's going to start. I hope he doesn't get buried amongst the older guys, because there's certainly a role he can play on this team. If Carlos is out, if Starling is out, Elijah Moore has to be your ball handler. I don't think Taylor is a primary ball handler. And your other option is Kyle Cuff, who I have playing 4 minutes a game, because he's a tough defender. He tries.
But that's all he does.
He's undersized, and yeah, offensively, he doesn't bring you anything.
Yeah.
And then at the 3, I have Chance Westry playing 12 minutes a game. You don't really know what we're going to get from Chance Westry. He played a third of a collegiate season at Auburn and then was down all of last year. And it sounds like Coach Autry doesn't really know where Westry fits in yet. At least that's what we heard at Media Day. And if you missed our Media Day reactions, you can catch it on our podcast network, Apple, Spotify. We reacted to all of Coach Autry's interview with the Field of 68, and Chance Westry was a topic. I have 12 minutes a game for Westry. Again, don't really know what he's going to get at his best. He's fantastic in transition, but I think there's some working back to game speed, which will apply. Johnny?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think for me, I look at this backcourt, and the thing that stands out to me the most is the depth. I mean, you've got essentially 6 guards, who you feel somewhat comfortable with. As far as the starters go, I have no qualms with your 3, Ian. I think Starling and Bell, it has to start there. And if this team is going to do anything this year, those 2 guys kind of need to be at the centerpiece of it. Jaquan Carlos has to be the point guard, right? One of the highest touted passers in the portal. That's what it felt like coming over from Hofstra. I disagree with you a little bit as far as the bench is concerned, as far as maybe who gets that first crack. I want to see what Chance Westry can do.
Okay.
I agree with you in that his role right now feels a little bit muddled, but I think that is the exact reason that you give him some run. You have to find out where he fits. You can't do that against Duke and Carolina. Guess what? Maybe you can against Lemoyne and Colgate. So I'd give Westry the first call off the bench just because, I don't know, obviously recruited to go to Auburn. The talent is there. Felt like last year there was a conversation of, if you get Westry back at any point, that is a serious plus. Here we are. He's healthy. Don't let a loaded guard room let this guy be prevented from growing into his full potential. I think he's got a high ceiling, and I don't think he reaches that ceiling unless he gets involved pretty early on. You don't want this to be a Benny Williams lost in the shuffle kind of situation. So I'm going to give Westry the first crack. I don't know if he'll be the 6th man, so to speak, but he is definitely the guard off the bench that I am looking to get the most playing time, at least, again, early stages. See what he can do.
I think it's fair to say Benny Williams lost himself in the shuffle.
Yeah, that's not a apples to apples comparison, but yes, you get the point.
I hope Westry brings a new dynamic to Syracuse basketball. I hope there is transition play that comes from that. I hope he can be a one-man fast break, because you won't necessarily get that from anyone else in the backcourt. Maybe Starling does it once in a while, but I see Westry as someone that can really go coast to coast with the best of them in the ACC.
I'm with you there. After that, I'll go, I think Taylor and Moore are, when it's all said and done, get similar minutes. Maybe you lean Taylor a little bit just because of the experience, the fact that this is not his first go around, that he's not a freshman, that like you say, Ian, he can be instant offense off the bench. And then I'd go Elijah Moore, and then have Kyle Cuff in the back end of that guard rotation. Again, I alluded to it earlier. He doesn't really bring much to the table outside of putting the clamps on and maybe, if somebody is in foul trouble, and you need to lock down a stellar guard on the other side. Okay, you give JJ a breather, you give Jaquan Carlos a breather, you give Cuff a little bit of run there. But, that's what we're looking at as far as the guard breakdown is concerned. No crazy disagreements. Give me a bold take you've got, Ian, as far as this guard group is concerned. Anything that might sound unpopular now that you could see unfolding over the course of the year?
Yeah, I kind of pondered this last night, sat on it for a little while. My bold prediction is Elijah Moore starts at least one game this season. And it can be for a variety of reasons. But when it comes to purely handling the basketball and bringing it up the floor and being dynamic with the ball in your hands, I think Moore has that juice. And last year, we have to give credit where credit is due. Syracuse did not have injury issues. Rarely ever. But these things come up, especially when you are playing game after game. This year there will be more travel for Syracuse than ever before. That also plays a factor. We never wish injury on anyone. But at the same time, this stuff happens. And with a guy like Lucas Taylor, it makes more sense to keep him in a dynamic microwave. I keep going back to the microwave thing, but that's what I think. I think of like Vinnie Johnson.
Yeah.
Esque role where he can be a spark off the bench. And I want Elijah Moore to be leading the offense because he can be a dynamic ball handler.
I like it. I would not be shocked whatsoever if Elijah Moore maybe starts more than one game over the course of the season.
If he just turns out to be that dude.
Yeah.
It would not surprise me.
Yeah, sure. Whenever I hear microwave, I think, by the way, sidebar, I think of the My Player badge in 2K when you're heating up and you get the microwave thing.
Yeah, and then the fire flames.
Yes.
Yeah. All right, what's your bold prediction, Johnny?
Yeah. I think, and I'm not in love with this, but that's why they're bold. Because of how deep this guard room is and because of how much different looks we could see, I would not be shocked, and I know we haven't seen it yet during his Syracuse career. I wouldn't be stunned whatsoever if we see J.J. Starling play a copious amount of point guard this year. To keep things fresh, to keep the minutes a revolving door, to try different guys at different spots. Let's not forget, Starling was recruited as a point guard coming out of high school. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe a 5-star one at that. So This is somebody who can handle the ball. And I know obviously the last couple of years that was Judah Mintz's job and he had a Copeland. If Moore doesn't pan out as a ball handler, but is more of a scorer, I look at this roster and outside of Jaquan Carlos, I don't see a ton of point guards. Now, granted, there are a lot of guards, but again, somebody's got to dribble the ball up the court. Starling can do it. And now don't get it twisted. I'm not saying that his scoring takes a back seat from that. Naturally, it probably would a little bit, just to it being a different role. But I don't see a significant scoring drop-off if that happens. And I think for JJ, if he wants to continue to evolve and become that complete all-ACC kind of guy, why not? Let's give it a shot. I would not be shocked whatsoever if we see JJ at the point a decent amount this season. Let's move to the front court now here, Ian. Not as many options, not as much depth. Granted, we're only dealing with 2 positions rather than 3, the 4 and the 5. I'll take the lead with this one if that's good by you here.
Yep.
Not a ton of different directions you could go in. The way I see it really boils down to probably 4 guys for 2 spots. That's Jair Davis, that is Donnie Freeman, that is Eddie Lampkin, and that is Naheem McLeod. The 2 that I tend to lean on, you figure, okay, you're not going to play small from the jump. So either McLeod or Lampkin is going to be the starting 5, and I'll go Lampkin there. And
it's a pretty easy pick.
Yeah, it has to be. I really like this Jair Davis kid, I do. But for everything we've been sold on Donnie Freeman, I don't know how he can't be starting right away. So that's my starting 5. I'll go Carlos, JJ, Bell, Freeman, and Lampkin. And Ian, I'd be a little surprised if you have it penciled in any differently.
No, I've got the exact same thing. My question for you, Johnny, is how do you see Red Autry splitting the minutes between Donnie Freeman and Jair Davis? I think it could be even.
I think so too.
20 and 20, something around there.
Yeah, I think so too. I think Freeman obviously is a freshman. There's going to be some growing pains. So, I don't think this is something where, he is going to be the guy right from the jump per se. And it's kind of one of those situations where maybe those 2 can kind of bring out the best in one another, right? Like in hockey or in soccer when you've got 2 goalies that play, right? It's a very different situation than football when, okay, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you really have none. Like, no, this is something where healthy competition could be good, right? And sort of having those minutes up for grabs and making it an even split. All right, guys, who wants it more? Maybe we see something out of either one of them to kind of take the bull by the horns. But yeah, I'm with you. I could see that being a split early.
The dynamic I'm looking for is how they match up. It all depends on who Syracuse could be playing that day. If you've got a Clemson of sorts where you're running up against 2 big guys that are going to be in the painted area at all times, like they did last year with PJ Hall, Ian Shefflin, probably see a lot more Davis. Bigger body. He's had 5 years now in a college weight room, diet, strength training. He's 6'7", 215. Pretty solidly built human being. And Donnie Freeman, given that he's just 18, is still arms and legs. So if you're playing against a team like a Colgate, where it's 4 3-point shooters and a center, They want to run around. They want to stretch the floor. I think Freeman makes a lot more sense because you're chasing guys here, there, and everywhere. Now, that all depends on who the foe is that day. But at the same time, I don't think you really lose a lot taking one guy off the floor against the other. Freeman right now is said to be a pretty good shooter. The numbers on Jair Davis shooting the basketball, especially from three, aren't great. So that is one thing that I think sets Freeman above, is his ability to space the floor. We talked about it a lot. Syracuse last year had so many problems when it came to guys clogging up the spacing. And I think Freeman does that well. So that's the 4 for me. You need Naheem McLeod to give you 12 minutes a game. Lampkin's going to start. No bones about it. But you need Naheem McLeod to give you minutes. My bold prediction, Johnny, and this is not a good one, but it is bold still, is that Jair Davis ends up playing a lot of center.
Okay, reason being?
I don't know if McLeod can stay on the floor.
Right.
He hasn't proven it yet. I mean, last year, even when he was healthy, he'd play 4 minutes and there he goes. And
right.
Malik Brown's playing the rest of 16 minutes of the first half. I just can't see him being a consistent contributor yet. And it's a shame to say yet, but at Florida State, they had 3 or 4 dudes they rotated in and out. And last year, McLeod just didn't have the juice to stay on the floor.
Yeah. I think that's a really good take by you. I think staying healthy is job number 1 for Naheem McLeod. If he can't stay healthy, then we've got much larger issues. And yeah, maybe you do see Davis playing some 5, maybe even Freeman playing some 5 if Syracuse really wants to go small.
No.
But that
would
be
that.
If that happens, it's probably really worst case scenario as far as the big men are concerned.
And Johnny, the other thing that we kind of chatted about before we started, William Patterson's no longer with the program. We learned that this week. He's at a junior college out in Kansas. And so that's probably why Syracuse added the Frenchman Peter Masterovich at the last moment, because they needed someone to fill that roster spot. He is 6'8". He is a back to the basket center. The ACC this year is not flush with great big guys like this. That we're not seeing Vernon Carey or Armando Bacot. Praise the Lord, Armando Bacot is out of college basketball.
Finally, jeez.
But yeah, those guys are not walking through the door.
Yeah,
you don't even have a big man on the. I mean, the big man on the preseason ACC first team is Cooper Flagg.
Right,
and he's going to be good. He's going to be really, really good.
Yes,
but he's not your traditional big. Beye Ndongo of Georgia Tech is the first real center we see on this list. And Ian Shefflin's on there too, on the second team.
Right.
But there aren't many 6'11", 7-foot dudes that are going to cause you problems this year in the ACC. And for Syracuse, that's a blessing. It means you don't need a McLeod as much. And maybe you can get away with these Davis minutes as compared to the Malik Brown at the 5 getting pushed underneath the basket by Armando Bacot, or Merrick Dolezaj picking up foul after foul, flailing his skinny arms.
Well, not only that too, but maybe it's a real advantage for Eddie Lampkin to feast down low if you do go up against some real undersized teams too. I'll give you my bold take here as far as this front court is concerned. Not as much related to who goes where, but more just overall numbers. I think in ACC play in 2024 and 2025 in conference games, Donnie Freeman leads Syracuse in scoring. I think if that happens, not only is that fantastic for him, but I think that means really good things are happening from a Syracuse standpoint in general. I don't think you need J.J. Starling to be the guy in order for this program to go dancing. I think if Donnie can be your leading scorer, if JJ maybe plays a little bit of point guard so that scoring takes a little bit of a drop, and you get a Chris Bell who upticks his scoring a little bit, I think Donnie Freeman is going to put the conference on notice. I'm talking all freshman team, maybe even a lower all conference team if things really pan out in his favor.
All right, well, spin the hype wheel, Johnny.
Yeah, I mean, come on. This program is begging for an NCAA tournament berth. Everybody knows it. We've been hearing about Freeman for a while. Maybe I've just been watching too much of his highlights. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe I'm in too deep with him at this point, but I'm excited. You should be too. Book it. ACC play. Donnie Freeman leads the Orange in scoring. That'll do it for this edition of Red is the New Orange. We'll be back next week when we continue to take a look at what Syracuse has in store for the early portions of this regular season. As always, you can find us wherever you get your podcast. We're also on YouTube as well. So if just listening to us isn't enough, if you would like to see us and our facial expressions as well, that is always an option too. Yes, we have been told by numerous people we do have faces for radio, but we'll leave it at that. With Ian, I'm Johnny saying so long. Have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you soon.